My name is Cyrus Hui, and 我的普通话说得很不好, so I apologize that after 2 days of debate whether I should be speaking in English or in 普通话, I finally decided maybe I should speak in English. So I think some of you asked you to bear with me. And you may be surprised to see an old man like myself standing in front of you, talking about technology, fashion, the digital age. I'm surprised at myself. And maybe I share with you some of my experience. Firstly, I was born in Guangzhou and I grew up in Hong Kong and went to the university in the US. Now, something I have not told many people was my undergraduate, I was a physics major. And I was a very poor student that just managed to graduate and get my degree. And after 2 years, I decided there was not much future with a career in physics. So I went back to the business school. And because of physics, I have some background in mathematics. So I chose quantitative analysis as my major in my MBA program. And in those days, this is back in 1960s, 667, before many of you were born. And in those days, maybe in the US, only a handful of professors or researchers were using mathematics to analyze the economics and the financial market. So when I chose that major, and I was the only one in the whole business school. And upon my graduation, some of the big banks from Wall Street came out to recruit. And I was very fortunate to be chosen as one of the first Asians going into the Wall Street. And I remember my first job, the head of the human resources of the bank wrote a recommendation and said, Cyrus is a very intelligent Chinaman. I don't know if you appreciate the term Chinaman, because in those days, Asians or Chinese were still not accepted in the American society, okay? So Chinaman is somewhat a little bit insulting and derogative. Let me put it that way. And then after 2 years, I used mathematics to try to analyze the stock market. And in those days, the computer, I don't know if you remember, the IBM machine is maybe 1/5 of the size of this room. And we use punch cards to input. And then when I was in the bank, we were using a computer to analyze the financial markets. In those days, it was time sharing and very slow. So after 2-3 years, I decided that, again, there was no future for me in doing quantitative analysis. But of course, today, as many of you know, all the tradings were done by the computer. You just push one button, you can sell 1,000 stocks. Okay? So that's about, 40 years ago. And just tell you how old I am. Now, a little bit maybe how I did get into the 3D technology. It was really by accident. It was about 4 years ago, I heard about 3D printing and did not pay much attention to it. And it was by accident that I was introduced to one of the founders of 3dprintingindustry.com, which is the leading media in 3D printing. And they were interested in finding a partner in Asia, especially in China. So I was in the US for 4 months, and I visited some designers, workshops, and dealers, and did some basic market research. And decided that although 3D printing is still at a fairly early stage, that maybe there's a future in it. So upon my return to Hong Kong, with some of my former colleagues and partners, we decided to start this business. We first started 3dtuple.com, which is a media in 3D printing. And last year, we started Aku3D.com, which is the e-commerce. and really more that we're working with designers all around the world. And already there are some designers and artists who are already very advanced in designing and coming up with 3D products that most of the world does not know generally that such already exists. So this is something I'd like to share with you today, okay? Now first, maybe talk a little bit about digital age. What is digital age? We are at the early stage, maybe, okay? If the first industrial revolution in the 19th century was about steam engine, later on electricity, it's really about, the dynamics. And the second industrial revolution in the 20th century started to have computers, then fiber optics, internet, and it's all about communications. Okay. Today, we like to think we are in the third industrial revolution of the digital age. So what does that mean? Digital age, to me, is that technology and mankind, human, will be closely interrelated. Hopefully, many of the technologies will be for the benefit of mankind. Okay? And so what does that to do with any one of us? I think on the supply side, in manufacturing, there will be drastic changes in the way goods will be made. So I'll explain later to that. And the technology involved really covers a full range. And we may be talking about the cloud, big data, artificial intelligence, robotics, AR, VR, and then the last but not least is 3D technology, which is something I would like to focus on a little bit now, trying to share with you. So what has that to do with all of us? And maybe first, just take a look at some of the examples that some of the designers in the world are already coming up with some very intricate designs and products using 3D technology. And maybe I explain 3D technology actually involve a number of technologies. First, as you well know, many of you in the computer field, or in the design field, it's the CAD computer aided design. Okay? Then there's the 3D scanning, 3D modeling, and milling, which is a subtractive manufacturing. And finally, but not least, is the 3D printing, which is additive manufacturing. Actually, you just put material dot by dot to build up whatever you want to do, okay? But before that, there's really a lot of design, a lot of concept to try to be creative and innovative. And then there's a lot of computer manipulation to come up with the model. And now there are many service bureaus that have very sophisticated and expensive machines that may print for you. But in the last few years, there were a lot of hype because some of the licenses had expired. So many can, we have some of you, maybe 3 or 4 of you young people get together, you build a 3D printing machine at home and you try to sell it now, several thousand RMB. You can buy one and then you try to start working with it from your home, okay? And that's something very encouraging to happen that I'll try to, again, explain a little bit later. So my main subject is art and fashion. Okay, so what has that to do with art and fashion? In fact, as I said, many of the artists and designers already engage in this creative process. Now, I first want to mention that already this is happening in China, right, among yourself. Steve Ma, who's an architect, a Hong Kong person, trained in the US, in Shanghai, and his company is called Supresoft.com, which makes excellent work in jewelry, in many of the designs. So recently, he worked with the Guangzhou Academy of Fine Arts to come up with 3D printed furniture and combining traditional furniture with 3D printing to make it a lot more interesting. So already this is happening, and it's not something we just dream about or what. Now, already, because many of the designers, especially architects, have been using 3D modeling for a long time, and many of them are very good with that. And one of the most famous architects, Zaha Hadid, who unfortunately passed away early this year, I think many of you know who she is. Okay? And she already started to get into 3D printing. This is a pair of high heels that she produced and showed in the Milan Fashion Week, I think 2 years ago. Now then, in terms of art, 3D printing is also making an inroad. Okay, this is again an Italian architect, and he's trying to restore antiques. This one was original 17th century, made by ivory. And his message is, nowadays, of course, many of the elephants were killed for their ivory. And if I may say, the Chinese are the worst offenders in that. Okay? So he's trying to propagate the idea that, you know, with 3D printing can reproduce some of the ivory art pieces rather than getting the ivory from the elephants. And another artist basically, try to scan some of the paintings and make it into a 3D model so that to allow the blinds to touch and feel art. Okay, because the blind person, if you talk to the blind person about Mona Lisa, no idea what that is. But with that, touch and feel, it tried to share with these unfortunate blind people that they can also enjoy art. Now, this Lionel Dean is one of the designers we work closely with from UK. He's one of the pioneers that started doing research and innovation in the early mid-1990s. And one of his work was acquired by MoMA of New York, which some of you know is one of the most outstanding modern art museums. This piece is as tall as 1 meter, directly from 3D printing. And after 3D printing, there's actually require a lot of polishing and then electroplating to add the gold or silver color and then the coloring. Okay. So there's a lot of work when it comes to art and really sophisticated products, comparing to a simple homemade 3D printer where many of you may think, oh, push a button and get something out of it. So that's completely quite two different worlds. Well, this is a series of jewelry that we're doing with about 6 designers all around the world, and with the Chinese zodiac animal, based on modern paintings of Vietnamese modern artists. So already some very sophisticated work is being done in this field. Finally, but not least, already there's a lot of innovation in terms of fashion. I mean, if you go to Fashion Week, whether in New York just a couple of weeks ago, or London, many of the designers are already using 3D printing to come up with fashion. All right? But from an economic point of view, maybe it's still not competitive because a full-length gown may take up to 400 hours to print. Okay? So not speaking of the design and the trimming. And it may cost you $10,000, $20,000 US. Now, if you get one of these dresses and you cannot wear it because it's sort of nylon material, not comfortable. But a lot of research is being carried out in material that we like to believe will revolutionize the fashion world in the next year or two. Okay, so let me go back and say, well, what has that all to do with any one of you? Okay. Now, in terms of manufacturing, I think the mold will be changing very rapidly and significantly. Today, especially China, in mass production, Many still relying on low-cost labor, okay? But that kind of scene is going to change very rapidly because nowadays with all the technology, especially 3D technology, we're moving into what we call manufacturing on demand, okay? And in small quantities. Already in the aerospace industry, as some of you may know, 3D printing is widely used. Some of the most sophisticated parts and components are really directly made from 3D printing using titanium. And one of the biggest problems with aerospace industry is how to keep inventory of, there may be millions of parts and components for all the aircrafts. So using 3D printing, well, ultimately you can think of maybe every airport, there may be some specialists. If an aircraft breaks down, they need certain parts and components will be printed on site. Okay? So all this distributed manufacturing on demand, that's going to come sooner than all of you would imagine if you not already know. And if you are an artist or a designer, then 3D technology are tools that will help you to create and innovate. Okay? You may be able to do things which by hand or other means you cannot do, and it doesn't mean that it do away with your creativity, because we still need very creative and innovative designers and artists to come up with anything worthwhile. I can paint something, but it's not worth a dime, okay? And there are artists that the work costs millions, and so there's a big difference in terms of really fine art and fine product. And these are the tools that will allow us to work with. And then on the consumer side, okay, all of you are consumers. And because new products coming up, so your behavior actually will be shaped and changed. Either you adapt to the new products, or new products adapt to you. And finally, if any one of you interested in doing startup or entrepreneur, you want to start up your venture, there will be many, many opportunities. Okay? You may be a consumer on one hand, and if you try to do something, you end up having a product, and you may become an entrepreneur. So of course, this is a very competitive world, and nothing comes easy. And in my life, I had more failures than successes that I can say to you. But every time I fail, I'll come up again and try something new. And despite my old age, I'm trying something new. I'm not sure what I'm going into, but I know that we have a business that will have future, and it's a matter of how to survive. And we want to survive in the next 2 years. And we are here to try to propagate, share with you some of these new ideas. And I would encourage many of you to try your hand in doing startup. You may want to design something, because at the end of the day, when we talk about 3D printing, it's DIY, do it yourself. Okay? And you may start something very simple, but after 10 years, 20 years, you may become a world-renowned designer. So you are all young, and they're 40, 50 years ahead of you. So don't be afraid to fail, but try your hand on it. And this is something I'd like to share with all of you. Thank you.